The date was September 11, 1599. A warm Roman morning, but the air was heavy with dread. On the Sant'Angelo bridge, a silent crowd gathered. In the center stood a scaffold. Upon it, a young woman in a white dress. Her hands were tied, her dark hair pulled back from her face. She was 22. Her name was Beatrice Cenci, and she was moments away from death. But Beatrice's story begins long before the blade. It begins inside the palatial walls of the Cenci residence, one of the most prestigious noble families in Rome. Her father, Francesco Cenci, was a man of enormous wealth and unspeakable cruelty. While the Cenci family owned lands, titles, and servants, behind closed doors they lived in fear. Especially Beatrice. Born in 1577, Beatrice was the product of privilege and pain. From the outside, she lived a dream. Silks, jewels, servants, suitors. But inside the mansion, she was a prisoner. Francesco kept her isolated from the world. Not out of protection, but possession. He did not want to lose his most prized creation. His daughter was not his child. She was his object. At first, it was control. He dictated how she dressed, who she spoke to, what she read. But by the time she turned 15, the control transformed into something darker. Francesco's obsession began to spill into the unspeakable. He entered her rooms without warning. He stared when she undressed. And soon, the whispers from the servants became chilling. Screams at night, locked doors, a girl slipping into madness. In a society where fathers held absolute authority, there was no escape. Francesco had friends in high places, bishops, cardinals, even men inside the Vatican. No one would believe a young woman over the word of a patriarch. Beatrice tried. She sent letters, begged servants to deliver messages. But nothing ever changed. Her cries vanished into silence. The terror only deepened. Francesco began arranging a marriage for her. Not to offer her freedom, but to continue his control through a puppet husband. That was when fate intervened. Beatrice met a young soldier, Olimpio Calvetti, who worked on their estate. He was kind. He listened. And for the first time in her life, Beatrice felt seen as a human. Their love was secret but intense. Late-night meetings, hushed promises, dreams of escape. But dreams don't last under tyranny. Francesco found out. Olimpio was cast out. Beatrice was locked away again. But this time, she did not cry. She plotted. The monster had to die. Beatrice wasn't alone. Her stepmother Lucrezia, long abused by Francesco herself, and her brother Giacomo, who had endured years of humiliation, joined her. They understood. This wasn't just about freedom, it was about survival. Francesco's madness was consuming the family. They devised a plan. It was risky, deadly, but simple. During their next trip to Petrella Castle, far from the scrutiny of Rome, they would eliminate Francesco. 2 men were hired. They would sneak into his room at night, make it look like an accident, perhaps a fall from the balcony. September 1598. The family retreated to Petrella. The assassins entered Francesco's room. He awoke, tried to fight, but he was silenced. His body fell to the stone floor, lifeless. The nightmare had ended, or so they thought. What followed was not relief, but hell. Francesco had made many enemies, owed many debts. His death could have been blamed on anyone. But suspicions turned quickly to the family. And at the center of it all, Beatrice. Why? Because she was beautiful. Because she was a woman. Because Pope Clement VIII needed to make an example. Rome was plagued with noble families who defied papal authority. The Pope wanted a spectacle, and the Cenci case gave him the perfect opportunity, a noble family murdering their patriarch. A beautiful daughter at the heart of it. It was political theater, and Beatrice was the tragic lead. The investigation began, and it was a farce. Torture was the preferred method of inquiry. Servants were beaten until they said what the Inquisition wanted to hear. Blood-soaked confessions, extracted in agony, sealed the fate of the Cenci family. Giacomo, Lucrezia, even the youngest brother, all thrown into the darkest dungeons. But Beatrice, she became the face of the scandal. Posters went up. Her face was everywhere. Artists painted her sorrowful expression. Poets wrote verses. She became a public fascination, not for her crime, but for her beauty. In a cruel twist, the very trait her father abused became the instrument of her execution. At trial, Beatrice did not beg. She told the truth. She spoke of the abuse, the rape, the psychological torment. But her words were met with cold stares. The judges weren't looking for justice. They wanted a sacrifice. The sentence: death. Public execution. Beatrice and Giacomo would be beheaded on the bridge. Lucrezia would be forced to watch. And the child? He was spared only because he was too young. September 11, 1599. The Sant'Angelo bridge groaned under the weight of thousands. Rome had come to witness the death of a young woman. Some out of bloodlust, others out of heartbreak. A whisper had spread. Beatrice would be spared. The Pope would pardon her. But when the executioners arrived, the crowd fell silent. Hope was lost. Beatrice appeared dressed in white. Not in mourning, but in defiance. Her head was held high. Her lips moved in silent prayer. The executioner's hands trembled. He had ended many lives, but none like hers. This wasn't punishment. It was murder. With a single motion, the blade fell. Beatrice's head dropped into the basket. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Then silence. No cheering. No jeering. Only the sound of sorrow. Giacomo was next. His death was crueler. He was tortured before his beheading, his flesh torn, his body broken. Lucrezia collapsed in agony. Rome had gotten its example. The Pope had made his point. But something unexpected happened. In the days that followed, flowers began appearing on the scaffold. Quiet prayers were whispered. The people had turned Beatrice into a martyr. Over time, her story spread beyond Rome. Painters immortalized her face. Writers told her story in plays, books, and poems. Her name became a symbol. Not of murder, but of resistance. Not of guilt, but of injustice. But was she guilty? The evidence was extracted under torture. The Pope had a political agenda. Francesco's crimes were real, well documented. So perhaps, if Beatrice did conspire, it was out of desperation. A final act of self-defense. Or perhaps, she didn't conspire at all. Perhaps she simply knew, and that was enough. In the eyes of power, Beatrice wasn't punished for murder. She was punished for defiance. Her beauty was too bright. Her courage too loud. In a world ruled by old men, Beatrice dared to say no. And for that, she lost her head. 4 centuries later, her ghost still walks the bridge, some say. Pale, dressed in white, a silent reminder of how far cruelty can go when cloaked in righteousness. Beatrice Cenci died because no one believed her. Because the law served the powerful. Because women were born guilty in a world that only knew how to punish. The blade fell not just on her neck, but on justice itself.